Before the sword is drawn, there is a silence. 500 years ago, warriors discovered a mental practice so powerful it made them immune to fear and unbreakable under pressure. They did this through 4 specific daily habits that rewired their minds. These habits were deliberately erased from history because they made people too dangerous, too disciplined, too impossible to control. What if you could take these exact practices and apply them to your life right now? These are concrete, actionable techniques that transform your relationship with fear, suffering, and commitment. But here's the dangerous part. These habits force you to confront what most people run from. They strip away every comfortable lie and every escape route. So, what were these 4 habits? And can you use them to build unstoppable discipline? If you want answers that will actually change your life, hit that subscribe button. This is Mind Abyss Archive, and what you're about to learn cannot be unlearned. There is a silence that exists before the sword is drawn, a stillness so profound that it separates the living from those who merely survive. The samurai understood this silence. They lived inside it. They died protecting it, and in that silence they discovered something the modern world has deliberately forgotten. Something so powerful that if you truly understood it, you would never be the same person again. This is not about martial arts. This is not about ancient Japan. This is about the 4 mental architectures that transformed ordinary men into forces of nature, into beings who could face death without flinching, who could endure pain without breaking, who could maintain absolute discipline when everyone around them crumbled into chaos. These are the forgotten samurai habits, erased from history because they make people too dangerous, too disciplined, too impossible to control. The first archive opens now. The first habit the samurai practiced was something they called the ritual of anticipated death. Every single morning, before the sun touched the horizon, before the world awakened, a samurai would sit in absolute darkness and mentally walk through his own death. Not just imagine it, experience it, feel the blade entering his body, sense the cold spreading through his limbs, taste the metallic flavor of blood in his mouth, watch his vision fade to black. This was not morbid. This was liberation, because once you have died 1,000 times in your mind, once you have felt your last breath leave your body in meditation, once you have experienced the absolute finality of existence in vivid detail, something inside you breaks free. The fear that controls most people, the fear that makes them hesitate, that makes them negotiate with their own standards, that makes them quit when things get hard, that fear loses its power completely. The samurai knew that discipline is impossible when you are afraid. When you fear discomfort, you avoid the gym. When you fear rejection, you avoid the conversation. When you fear failure, you avoid the risk. But when you have already died, when you have already experienced the worst possible outcome in your mind with such clarity that it feels real, suddenly everything else becomes easy. The workout that seemed impossible becomes trivial. The cold shower that seemed unbearable becomes nothing. The difficult conversation that seemed terrifying becomes simple. This is why the samurai could charge into battle without hesitation, not because they were fearless, but because they had already processed their fear in advance. They had already died before the battle began. So the actual battle was just a formality. Modern high achievers have forgotten this. They wake up and immediately check their phones, flooding their minds with other people's emergencies, other people's opinions, other people's lives. They never create space for their own deaths. They never sit with their own mortality. They never process their deepest fear, so that fear follows them everywhere, whispering in the background, sabotaging their discipline, making them weak exactly when they need to be strong. The samurai spent the first hour of every day confronting what everyone else spends their entire life running from. And that single hour of darkness gave them a lifetime of unshakable discipline. Because once you have already died, there is nothing left to fear. Once you have already lost everything in your mind, there is nothing left to lose. Once you have already faced the absolute worst, everything else is just noise. This is the first forgotten habit. Die every morning so you can live without fear every day. In the second archive of the Forgotten Samurai, we uncover a habit that is both profound and profoundly counterintuitive to our modern way of life. It's a practice the samurai called shuju, or the practice of deliberately chosen suffering. This wasn't a punishment. This was training, a forging of the mind and spirit. Once a month, sometimes even once a week, a samurai would voluntarily and methodically remove every single thing that made their life comfortable. Imagine this: no crackling fire to warm you in the dead of winter, no nourishing food for days on end, only the gnawing pangs of hunger, no water beyond the absolute minimum needed to survive, no sturdy shelter to protect you from the driving rain, no soft bed to rest your weary bones. No warm clothing, just the thinnest of robes against the biting wind. They would sit in meditation in freezing temples, their breath turning to mist before their eyes. They would fast until their bodies screamed for nutrition, every cell crying out for sustenance. They would stand under icy waterfalls until their skin turned blue and their muscles seized, all while maintaining a state of deep focus. This was their crucible. Why would they do this? Because the samurai understood a fundamental truth about human nature. A truth that modern psychology is only now beginning to rediscover. Your discipline is only as strong as your relationship with discomfort. Think about that for a moment. If you only perform when you feel good, when conditions are perfect, when you're motivated and energized, then you don't really have discipline. What you have is conditional obedience to your emotions. You are a servant to your feelings. Real discipline, the kind the samurai cultivated, means you do what must be done regardless of how you feel, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the pain. It's about commitment, not convenience. And the only way to build that kind of unyielding discipline is to regularly and intentionally strip away everything comfortable. You have to prove to yourself, over and over, that you can function, that you can think clearly, that you can execute your duties even when every fiber of your being wants to quit. This was the essence of shujyo, the practice of austerity, and they knew it was the only way to forge an unbreakable mind. Now, let's contrast that with our modern world. We do the exact opposite. Our entire society is built around the optimization of comfort. We relentlessly seek to eliminate friction. We make everything as easy as possible. We use every convenience, every shortcut, every app, every tool designed to reduce effort and minimize struggle. We order food to our door. We automate our tasks. We seek the path of least resistance in almost every aspect of our lives. And then we wonder. We wonder why we have no discipline. We wonder why we can't stick to our diets, our workout plans, our personal goals. We wonder why we crumble under the slightest pressure, why a little bit of stress sends us spiraling. The answer is simple, and it's staring us right in the face. We have never trained in discomfort. We have never deliberately chosen to suffer. We have never forged our resilience in the fires of voluntary hardship. So, when real, unavoidable hardship arrives, and it always does when life removes our comfort without asking for our permission, we collapse. We fall apart immediately because we have no foundation of mental toughness. We have no frame of reference, no mental database that says, I have survived worse than this. We are brittle, fragile, and unprepared for the realities of the human experience. The samurai built that database intentionally. They thought of it like a bank account for resilience. They deposited suffering into their nervous system, memory by memory, challenge by challenge, so that when they needed to make a withdrawal, when the chaos of battle erupted, when a grievous injury struck them down, when starvation became a real possibility, their mind could instantly access those memories. It could say, I have endured this before, and I will endure it again. This isn't just about surviving, it's about remaining effective and clear-headed amidst the storm. This is precisely why samurai disciplines seemed superhuman to outsiders. It wasn't because they were born different or were a special breed of human. It was because they trained differently. They understood a powerful equation. Comfort is the enemy of discipline. Ease is the enemy of strength. Convenience is the enemy of character. Every single time you choose the comfortable option, you are casting a vote for a weaker version of yourself. Every time you hit the snooze button instead of getting up immediately when the alarm rings, you are teaching your mind that your comfort is more important than your commitment. You are training yourself to negotiate with your own goals. Every time you skip the workout because you don't feel like it, you are reinforcing the dangerous pattern that your feelings get to determine your actions. You are letting a temporary emotion dictate your long-term destiny. Every time you quit when things get hard, whether it's a difficult project at work, a challenging conversation, or a personal goal, you are programming your subconscious mind to be a person who quits when things get hard. You are building an identity around giving up. The samurai understood this with absolute, piercing clarity. So they chose suffering on purpose, not because they were masochists who enjoyed pain, but because they knew that voluntary discomfort today prevents involuntary collapse tomorrow. It was a strategic investment in their future selves. They knew that if you never practice being cold, you will freeze in panic when the real winter comes. If you never practice being hungry, you will be consumed by fear when food becomes scarce. If you never practice being utterly exhausted, you will quit long before you reach your true limits. And this is the key: if you regularly choose to be cold, to be hungry, to be exhausted, not because you have to, but because you choose to, then something remarkable happens. When those conditions appear naturally in your life, your mind recognizes them as familiar territory. The panic doesn't set in, the alarm bells don't ring. Instead, you remain calm, focused, and disciplined. You see the hardship not as a catastrophe, but as a challenge you have trained for. This is the second forgotten habit of the samurai, a call to action for the modern world. You don't have to meditate under a waterfall or fast for 3 days, but you can find your own shujyo. Take a cold shower instead of a hot one. Skip a meal intentionally. Go for a run when it's raining and you'd rather stay inside. Do the difficult task first thing in the morning. Put your phone in another room for a few hours. Choose your voluntary hardship. Choose it regularly so that you never have to fear suffering again. Build your bank account of resilience, deposit by deposit. Forge your own unbreakable mind. This is the path to true strength and discipline. Start today. Choose your discomfort. Thank you for watching. If this idea resonates with you, subscribe for more forgotten wisdom, and share your own practice of shujyo in the comments below. The third archive opens now, and it reveals something darker. The third habit the samurai practiced was the discipline of total social isolation. Not occasionally, not as a retreat, but as a regular, structured practice woven into the fabric of their existence. The samurai would disappear for days, sometimes weeks, into complete solitude. No conversations, no human contact, no external stimulation. Just them, alone with their thoughts, alone with their demons, alone with the unfiltered truth of who they actually were beneath all the social masks and performances. And in that isolation, something profound happened. All the noise that normally drowns out self-awareness, all the distractions that prevent deep reflection, all the external validation that props up false confidence, all of it vanished. What remained was the raw, unedited version of themselves, the version that could not lie, the version that could not pretend, the version that had to face every weakness, every fear, every unresolved pain without any escape route. Modern people are terrified of this. We fill every moment with noise. Podcasts while we work, music while we exercise, videos while we eat, conversations while we commute. We never allow silence. We never allow stillness. We never allow ourselves to be truly alone with our own mind. And we do this for one reason. Because being alone with yourself is confronting. Because when you strip away all the distractions, when you remove all the external voices, when you sit in complete silence with nothing but your own thoughts, you have to face who you actually are. Not who you pretend to be, not who you want others to think you are, but who you actually are in the dark when nobody is watching. The samurai knew that this confrontation was essential. They knew that you cannot build real discipline on a foundation of self-deception. You cannot develop true strength if you are constantly running from yourself. You cannot achieve mastery if you need constant external validation to feel worthy. So they forced themselves into isolation regularly. They stripped away all the comfortable distractions. They sat alone in temples, in forests, in mountains, and they faced themselves completely. And in that facing they discovered their real edges. They found the places where their discipline was weak. They identified the thoughts they had been avoiding. They confronted the fears they had been suppressing. And most importantly, they learned to be comfortable in their own presence, to not need anything or anyone to feel complete, to find peace in absolute solitude. This is a superpower in the modern world. Most people cannot be alone for even 1 hour without reaching for their phone, without turning on a screen, without finding some way to escape from themselves. They are so uncomfortable in their own presence that they would rather scroll through strangers' lives than sit with their own thoughts. But the samurai understood that if you cannot be alone with yourself, you are not truly free. You are dependent on external stimulation for your mental state. You are a slave to distraction. You are weak exactly where you need to be strongest. The challenge isn't just about putting away your phone. It's about learning to sit in the silence and listen to what your own mind has to tell you. It's about finding strength not from the outside world, but from the quiet, unshakable core within. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Real discipline means becoming your own source of stability. It means you don't need motivation from others, entertainment to feel okay, or constant validation to know your worth. The only way to build this internal stability is to regularly practice being completely alone. No escapes, no distractions, no safety nets. Just you and the truth of who you are. The samurai did this because they knew that in battle, you are always alone. No matter how many soldiers fight beside you, when the sword comes for your throat, you face it alone. If you've never practiced being alone, if you've never built that internal fortress, you will panic in that moment. But if you have spent hundreds of hours in deliberate isolation, if you've already faced yourself in the dark over and over again, then being alone in battle feels natural. It feels like home. This is the third forgotten habit. Isolate regularly to build unshakable internal strength. Before we open the fourth and final archive, I need you to do something. Pause for a moment and ask yourself this question. What would your life look like if you genuinely had samurai-level discipline? Not just for a week or a month, but permanently wired into who you are. How would your body look? How would your bank account look? How would your relationships look? How would you feel when you look in the mirror? Really think about it. Then go to the comments right now and complete this sentence. If I had samurai discipline, the first thing I would change is, write it down, make it real. Because the samurai knew that awareness without action is just entertainment. And this knowledge should disturb you enough to move. Post your answer now. Let this community see your commitment. The fourth archive opens, and it contains the most dangerous habit of all. The fourth practice the samurai lived by was something they called the code of no negotiation. This wasn't about being stubborn or rigid. It was about understanding that discipline dies the moment you start negotiating with yourself. The samurai made decisions in advance about who they were and what they would do, and then they removed all future negotiations from the equation. When a samurai decided he would wake before dawn, that wasn't a decision he revisited every morning. When he decided he would train regardless of the weather, that wasn't something he reconsidered when it rained. When he decided he would face death with honor, that wasn't a choice he debated in the moment. The decision was made once, permanently, and everything that followed was simply execution. No internal debate, no mental negotiation, no weighing of options. This is what modern people have completely lost. We make the same decision over and over again. Every single day, should I work out today? Should I eat healthy today? Should I focus on my goals today? And every time we reopen that negotiation, we create an opportunity to fail. Because decisions made in the moment are made by whoever you are in that moment. And in that moment you might be tired, you might be stressed, you might be unmotivated. But decisions made in advance are made by your highest self, by the version of you that sees clearly, that thinks strategically, that knows what must be done. The samurai understood this deeply. They didn't rely on fleeting feelings or daily motivation. They relied on a pre-made commitment to their principles. This is the code of no negotiation. You decide once who you are going to be, and then you simply live it out, day after day. You don't ask yourself if you feel like doing the hard work. The decision is already made. Your only job is to execute. This is the path to unshakable discipline. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more. Did you know the samurai had a secret to unstoppable discipline? It's something we've forgotten. They built their entire lives around decisions made in advance. They decided once who they would be, and then they became that person every single day, without question. Imagine this: no internal dialogue about whether you feel like training. No debate about whether you're in the mood for discipline. For the samurai, there was only the code they had chosen and the relentless execution of that code, no matter the circumstances, feelings, or difficulty. This is the key. You don't try to be disciplined in the moment. You decide in advance who you are. You lock in that identity, and then you refuse to negotiate with yourself ever again. Think about it. The workout is not optional. The cold shower is not a debate. The early wake-up is not a discussion. These things are simply what you do because that's who you decided to be. That decision is final. When you live this way, discipline stops being a daily struggle. You're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not wasting precious mental energy debating whether you should do what you already know you should do. The decision is made. The matter is settled. All that's left is execution. The samurai weren't superhuman. They simply made a decision once and stuck to it, permanently. They didn't leave themselves escape routes or create backup plans for moments of weakness. They decided, and then they became their decision, without exception, excuse, or negotiation. Today, we do the complete opposite. We leave ourselves 1,000 escape routes. We say things like, I'll work out, unless I'm too tired. I'll eat healthy. Unless I'm stressed, I'll focus on my goals. Unless something more interesting comes up. Every single one of those unless statements is a pre-installed failure point. It's a negotiation you've already lost before it even begins. The samurai removed all the unless statements. They said, I will train, period. I will endure, period. I will maintain my code, period. No conditions, no exceptions, no negotiations. That's why their discipline seemed impossible. It wasn't because they had more willpower than you. It's because they removed the need for willpower by eliminating the negotiation entirely. Willpower is what you need when you're still debating with yourself. But when the debate is over, when the decision is permanent, willpower becomes irrelevant. You simply do what you already decided to do. This is a forgotten habit we need to revive. Decide once who you are and never negotiate that decision again. This isn't just ancient history or some cultural relic. It's a timeless principle of human psychology that works just as well today as it did 500 years ago. The samurai didn't have special genetics or superhuman brains. They just understood how to build discipline from the ground up. Along with this core principle, they practiced a few other mental frameworks with religious consistency. They believed in dying every morning, so they could live without fear. They chose suffering regularly, so they would never fear hardship. They isolated themselves deliberately to build internal strength. And, as we've discussed, they decided once and never renegotiated. These 4 practices will transform you, but only if you actually implement them. It's not enough to think about them or agree with them. You have to do them, consistently. You have to build them into your daily existence, just like the samurai did. If you do, they will reconstruct your mind from the ground up. You'll become the kind of person who doesn't need motivation, because you'll have something far more powerful: discipline. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content on building a stronger mindset. See you in the next one. You'll become the kind of person who doesn't crumble under pressure, because you've deliberately trained in it. You'll become someone who doesn't quit when things get hard, because hard is where you live. You'll become dangerous in the most beautiful way. Dangerous to mediocrity, dangerous to weakness, dangerous to everything inside you that wants to settle for less than you're capable of. But let's be real. Here's what most people will do with this information. They'll watch this video. They'll feel inspired for about 10 minutes. They'll think, wow, these are interesting ideas. And then, they'll go right back to their comfortable lives and absolutely nothing will change. Why? Because transformation doesn't come from inspiration, it comes from implementation. It comes from taking these ancient habits and forcing them into your life, even when every part of you resists. It comes from the practice of dying in your mind every morning, even when it feels uncomfortable and morbid. It comes from choosing cold showers and fasting in discomfort, even when warmth and food and ease are just a step away. It comes from sitting in silence with yourself, even when distraction is screaming for your attention. It comes from locking in your decisions and refusing to renegotiate, even when your feelings are begging you to quit. This is not easy. The samurai didn't develop these habits because they were easy. They developed them because they were necessary. They knew that life does not care about your comfort. Reality doesn't adjust to your feelings. The world won't soften its edges just because you're having a bad day. So, Either you become hard enough to meet reality on its own terms, or reality will slowly break you over time, until nothing remains of the person you thought you could be. The choice has always been yours. The samurai understood this. They knew that discipline isn't something you just find, it's something you build. It's something you forge in the fire of deliberately chosen difficulty. It's something you earn by doing hard things when you don't feel like doing them. By showing up when showing up is the last thing you want to do. By keeping your word to yourself, especially when no one else is watching. Most people never build real discipline because they are always waiting to feel motivated, waiting for the perfect time, waiting for conditions to improve, for life to get easier. But the samurai never waited. They understood that the perfect time is now. The perfect conditions are these conditions right here. The perfect moment is whatever moment you are currently in. So they started. They began the practice of death meditation, even when it felt strange. They embraced suffering, even when it seemed unnecessary. They sought isolation, even when connection seemed easier. They locked in their code, even when flexibility seemed smarter. And over time, slowly, painfully, consistently, those practices transformed them into something different. Something stronger. Something unbreakable. You've just been given the foundational habits that created some of the most disciplined minds in human history. The samurai are gone, but their methods remain, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to take them seriously enough to actually practice them. Most people won't. They'll treat this like entertainment, like interesting content to consume and then forget. But you're still here. You're still listening, which means something inside you recognizes that this is not entertainment. It's a choice. You can click away and let this be another forgotten video, or you can decide, right now, to begin, to implement, to become unbreakable. The journey starts with a single, difficult choice. What will yours be? Thanks for watching. If this message resonated with you, subscribe for more content that challenges you to become your best self. See you in the next one. This is a transmission. This is a code being passed from one generation to another. This is the architecture of discipline, handed to you directly, not through some watered-down self-help version, but in its raw, unfiltered, dangerous form. What you do with it now determines everything. You can close this video and go back to your life unchanged, or you can take the first habit and implement it tomorrow morning. You can sit in darkness before dawn and walk through your own death. You can feel it. You can process it. You can free yourself from fear by confronting fear directly, and then the next day you can do it again, and the day after that, and slowly, one repetition at a time, you can build what the samurai built, not in ancient Japan but in your own life, right now. In the modern world where discipline is rarer and therefore more powerful than ever before, this channel exists for one reason: to unlock the forbidden archives of human potential, to reveal the mental practices that have been forgotten or deliberately hidden because they make people too powerful to control. If this resonated with you, if something inside you recognizes that this is what you have been searching for, then subscribe now because this is just the beginning. There are dozens of other archives waiting, other forgotten practices from warriors, monks, philosophers, and outliers throughout history who discovered secrets about the human mind that most people never learn. Each video is another key. Each transmission is another piece of the puzzle. But only if you are serious, only if you are willing to actually implement what you learn instead of just consuming content and moving on. Subscribe if you are ready to build real discipline, the kind that does not fade when motivation disappears, the kind that does not break when life gets hard, the kind that transforms you into someone you barely recognize, because you have become so much stronger than who you used to be. The samurai are watching, not from some mystical realm, but from the patterns they left behind, from the practices they perfected, from the code they lived and died protecting. That code is now yours. Those habits are now accessible to you. The only question that remains is whether you will honor them by actually using them, or whether you will disrespect them by treating them like interesting ideas that change nothing. The difference between those two choices is the difference between a life of discipline and a life of regret. Choose carefully. Choose now. And if you choose discipline, if you choose to walk the path the samurai walked, then start tomorrow morning in the darkness before dawn. Sit alone, close your eyes, and die. Die completely in your mind. Feel every detail, experience the end. And then when you open your eyes and realize you are still alive, you will understand what the samurai understood, that after you have already died, everything else is just bonus time. And bonus time is not wasted on fear, on hesitation, on weakness. Bonus time is spent becoming who you were always capable of being. Unstoppable, undistracted, unbreakable. This is the way. This is the way. This has always been the code. Now go and prove that you understand it.